Hi, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and after all of the Christmas stuff going on, I finally found some time to rewatch that game, and we are going to break down every part of that game. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the overall offense, a little bit of time over the overall defense, but for the most part, we're diving into the biggest standouts from that game. Good and bad. We're like, it's plenty of both. You know what I'm saying? Just because we lost does not mean we didn't have any good, but I'm also not about to just sit here and just up everybody that played in that game. We have a lot of bad to talk about. We're going to go in order of position group, but we're going to talk about every player that had a meaningful impact on this game, whether positive or negative, bro. And I mean, Deebo, Bill, Newton, balled out. We got to dive into all three of those, especially the weird situation with Johnny Newton, where it's like he had an amazing game, but he also had a bad game at the same time. He's weird where he was very positive and also very negative. I have a big Quinn rant at the end, towards like the end of the video. I have some advanced stats. We're going to dive into a lot. And is safety the biggest need for the Commanders right now? We're going to dive into that as well. But before we get into everything, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinion video just like this one. Really appreciate y'all for supporting the channel, man. Shouts out to my watch to the end gang that watch these videos all the way through. Appreciate y'all. Shouts out to Noti gang that are on these videos immediately after I release them. Shouts out to my late night crew. I'm recording this at 2:54 a.m. right now Eastern time. So shouts out to y'all, of course, because y'all be up just like I'm up. But also shouts out to the early morning crew. First thing you do, pull up a StreetScores video, man. I appreciate all of y'all. Without further ado, let's go dive into this video right now, man. Again, please make sure you subscribe if you haven't. I have loads of off-season content for y'all. I'm working on a mock draft before we play the Eagles season finale. Then I'm gonna be hitting y'all with a lot more mock drafts this off-season. Y'all know anything for agency and draft, I have you super covered. So stay tuned. Let's go and dive into the video right now, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so overall, first of all, I wanted to let you know, and shouts out to Evan Kaplan for bringing this to our attention. Most wins last season, and then it's like ranked 2, and then dash the result this season. How about the Chiefs with the most wins last season along with the Lions, both eliminated from the playoffs? Then you have the Eagles with 14 wins last year. They clinched the NFC East. That's cool. The Vikings also had 14 wins last year, eliminated. The Bills had 13 wins last year. They've clinched a playoff spot. Shouts out to them. Commanders, 12 wins, eliminated. Ravens, 12 wins last year, potentially eliminated this year as well if they lose today, as in, you know, later on this Sunday. And it's the point that you not only can you never predict the NFL, but also this season was kind of upside down. If you look at it from the point of view, like, yes, the Commanders had a horrible season, but like, so did the Chiefs, so did the Lions. Now, granted, their seasons weren't as bad as ours, but they also weren't as hurt as us. We were the most hurt team in the NFL this year. Again, the stats prove it. I'm working on that video. I'll probably just wait until the end of the season so I can make sure I have the most accurate stats possible. At this point, I don't want to do a video with like a game or two left, depending on which team is playing, and then like the stats are all misconstrued and stuff like that. I want to present to y'all a video of when we were by far the most hurt team in the middle of the season, and then we'll do like an update at the end of the season to show y'all like, okay, it kind of almost evened out towards the end, but when football mattered, when we needed to win games, we were the most hurt team in the NFL by far. But again, my point is, I know this Commander season went terribly, but a lot of other great teams had weird seasons as well. This season was kind of an upside down Twilight Zone type season. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't read too much as far as like the future of the Commanders. We had a terrible season in 2025. We're going to be terrible from here on out. There are a lot of things we have to fix, and we're going to dive into that throughout this video because, again, we're going position group by position group. Even when we're talking about some good, there's still some bad we got to present. But at the same time, when you look at it from the fact that the Chiefs, Lions, Vikings, and Ravens, none of them expected this season to go anywhere that it went this year, and compared to how they felt last year going into this season, they're just as disappointed as we are. And then also, speaking of disappointment, shouts out to All Galdi for pointing out the fact that now that the Commanders are done with a Washington franchise record 8 standalone games in the 2025 regular season, the Commanders in those games went 0-8 with a point differential of -77, bro. So We'll probably have more 1 p.m. games next year, but I'm going to let you know right now, because of Jaden Daniels alone, we're still going to have a few. We're just probably not going to be tied in the NFL with the most, like with the Chiefs and stuff like that, or the Cowboys. We're going to be somewhere towards like maybe top 10 in standalone games, but I'm not expecting to be top 2 like we were this year, though. Again, Jaden Daniels is going to pull numbers and views no matter what, so it's not like we're just going to completely disappear off the face of the earth and go back to like the 2023 season where we just had all 1 p.m. games almost, except for like the required amount of you got to play a Thursday night, you got to play a Monday night, you know, the basic minimum of primetime standalone games that you have to have. So I'm letting you know right now, we're probably still going to have like 4 or 5 next year, just to warn you. Now, moving on to just the overall offense. First of all, Samuel Cosmi and Chris Rodriguez were out, on top of all of the other injuries that we've had all season long, all of the guys that's on IR and stuff like that. Offensively, you were without Samuel Cosmi and Chris Rodriguez as well. So Nick Allegretti got the start at right guard, but then eventually at some point in the game, Tyler Biadasz even got hurt. But shouts out to Cliff Kingsbury. The first drive got Josh Johnson started with some really easy throws. He went 3 for 3 for 68 yards on the first drive. And even like a quick out to Treylon Burks was nice. Then he had a nice comeback route to Terry McLaurin that he threw. Then the screen for Deebo to win for 41 yards. I mean, he was making things very easy for Josh Johnson. Now, granted, Josh Johnson didn't have anywhere near as bad of a game, knowing that he was going to be the starter for snap 1 of that game against the Cowboys compared to how he played last week against the Eagles, but it still wasn't perfect. You know what I'm saying? There was still an element of, man, of course, if Marcus Mariota was in that game, we would have scored more points. Maybe you win. If Jaden Daniels was played in that game, I am confident that we win that game. So Josh Johnson was enough of a difference from Jaden and Marcus Mariota to be like, yeah, he kind of, you could argue, helped us lose the game, even though the defense, most people would blame them more than anything else. We're going to dive into those stats later as to why the defense probably is the bigger blame. But I'm more so shouting out Cliff Kingsbury for, even with Josh Johnson, still moving the ball and scoring points with your third string quarterback is pretty impressive. And then going back to the point of Josh Johnson literally costing us points offensively. Shouts out to my boy Deuce Red Zone at Red Zone in the Lab. He on Twitter does a whole film session showing you where Josh Johnson cost us points. He said Cliff Kingsbury gets a lot of heat from some, but tape doesn't lie. Mariota missed a few layups last week, and then you had Josh Johnson this week. Back-to-back goal line plays that should have been touchdowns. If you look at the plays, Terry is wide open on 2 of them. Both of them, he should have had touchdowns. Of course, you know, these are back-to-back plays. We're not going to say Terry should have had 2 touchdowns from this, but he should have had at least 1 from these sequence of plays. Again, it's back-to-back plays in the red zone goal line. Terry at first beats 2 people with a late, like, stutter, and then he runs a slant wide open in the middle of the field. Josh Johnson isn't even looking at him, bro. And then the next play, they run a pick play for Terry. He runs underneath it. The nearest corner is 3 yards away. Easy Terry touchdown. And Josh Johnson doesn't even look his way and throws a difficult pass to Treylon Burks that ends up not even being caught, though. So, again, I don't want to dive too far into that because Josh Johnson is not a part of our future plans. The main reason for this video is to focus on guys that are part of our future plans. But I'm bringing this up because, again, not because of Josh Johnson, but the fact that Cliff Kingsbury gave answers. He gave easy answers for touchdowns, for more points. Josh Johnson just didn't see them, just didn't take them, whatever. For both of those examples, he just flat out didn't even look Terry's way. Or at least he looked away right before Terry got open on the first one, I believe. So my main point is Cliff Kingsbury can still scheme up 30 points per game, even with a third string quarterback, if the third string quarterback just does what he's asked to do. So the problem was not Cliff. Cliff has not been perfect this season. He has not run the ball nearly enough. No, I feel like he hasn't done a great enough job of at least giving Ben Simmons more opportunities so that we can know what he has to offer by the time we get to the next season. I feel like Bill hasn't been used enough. I know there's a fumbling problem, and we're going to dive into that later, but Bill has not been used enough. But on top, with all of the critiques, Cliff Kingsbury is still a perfectly good offensive coordinator. He may not necessarily be the best offensive mind in football. I'm not necessarily saying that, But this guy can score points no matter who he has at his disposal. There's a big difference of Cliff Kingsbury not having Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin for a lot of the year and Bill fumbling occasionally and all of the different problems we've had compared to Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. calling our defense with all of the injuries they've had. Both the offense and the defense have had a lot of injuries, but yet our offense has looked better than our defense most games. But we still had moments there where, like, Terry McLaurin had a really good catch to convert a third down. I want to let you know that Terry McLaurin catch where we converted a third down with 3 minutes, 30 seconds left in the third quarter was sadly our first third down conversion of the game. I just really want to let you know that, bro. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. Then also at some point, we had a really bad set of downs moment where we were 2nd and 1 after a 9-yard gain. Then no gain on 2nd and 1 to make it 3rd and 1. Then we lose 2 on 3rd and 1 to make it 4th and 3. And then we have a killing Brandon Coleman. I think it was a false start penalty, I believe, to take it to 4th and 8. How do you go from 2nd and 1 to 4th and 8 is beyond me. So, I mean, Cliff trying, feel like overall he was all right. He was pretty good, especially compared to like with the options he had at his disposal, the talent that he had available. I felt like he was solid. Now moving on to the running back, because again, we're not spending time on Josh Johnson today, outside of the fact that he was better, but he still wasn't good at the end of the day. He ran, he managed the offense that Cliff Kingsbury wanted to run. He ran it pretty smoothly, and he exceeded my expectations, but he was still costing us points at the end of the day. Now moving on to, again, running back. Another Rookie of the Week on the way for Bill Krosky-Merritt. I don't care what happens in these games coming up today on Saturday or what happens tomorrow on Sunday. Either Bill is going to end up winning Offensive Rookie of the Week. I felt like even 2 weeks ago when he won it after the Giants game, I was like, you could argue one or two of those guys that were candidates deserved it more. I think Bill, as great of a game as he had against the Cowboys, is more than likely going to earn it. I feel like our fan base has just done a great job of voting for him. Me included, because I vote like at least minimum 10 times every time one of our guys is up there for a special teams player of the week like a Jalen Lane or a offensive rookie of the week like Bill. We're undefeated. Anytime we have a player nominated, they win. But Bill actually, for real, earned it today, bro, in that game against the Cowboys, man. I mean, honestly, forgive Rookie of the Week. How about Bill had arguably the best season of any rookie running back in the NFL this 2025 NFL draft, bro? But we'll come back to that later. I promise you we're going to come back to that. But just to let you know, if you didn't know, Bill had 11 carries, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 22.5 PPR points in that game against the Cowboys. Granted, a loss, but it wasn't Bill's fault. And Bill scored our first touchdown of the day. And that's 3 touchdowns, 3 games in a row with a touchdown, while severely underutilized until this game. Even the previous even the week that he won Offensive Rookie of the Week a couple of weeks ago, I feel like he shouldn't have gotten the ball more. And then last week, I think he only had like 11 snaps and like a single-digit amount of carries, like something insane. Like, that's ridiculous. But yet, this is the 3rd game in a row he's had a touchdown. In this game, he was finally featured. Not only just utilized, but featured. And there was good blocking on that first touchdown play that he had, but Bill's ridiculous cuts were the main reason that he was able to get that touchdown on that play, bro. No other running back on our roster has the ability to cut the way that he does. And I don't think any other running back, even in healthy Austin Eckler, scores a touchdown on that play. They get a good amount of yards because, again, the blocking was great. But Bill made that touchdown at the next level, bro. I mean, the first cut got him into the correct gap, like, immediately, to where the other, like, linebacker that came through missed because of Bill's cut. It's like the linebacker wasn't wrong. Bill just saw the linebacker coming, made an insane cut, the guy missed. And then the second cut allowed him to not only run past a linebacker that was in front of him, but also a defensive tackle that was coming from behind to get him. That cut made him force both of those guys to miss. And then his strength and burst did the rest to get all the way to the end zone. Granted, it was only like a 10-yard touchdown run, but it was an insane run that, again, I'm not sure if any other running back, because I don't think Bill has the explosion, the burst, and the cutting ability to even get to that, allow the blocks to happen how they went in the first place. I think, you know, Chris Rodriguez probably gets like 5-6 yards out of it, but I don't think he gets a full 10 and a touchdown. He's stronger than Bill, but he doesn't have the cutting ability of Bill. Austin Eckler, especially at this age, he's not that athletic. Even if he were fully healthy, he wouldn't have been able to cut and do that. And then, I mean, are we talking about Jeremy McNichols? Again, another strong guy and fairly quick, but does not have that jump cutting ability. The reason that touchdown was scored, more so than anything else, his jump cutting ability. And of course, that was his 7th touchdown of the season. He finished with 8, but that one right there was 7. He officially passed Jaden Daniels from last year and Rob Kelly of 2016 with 6 touchdowns, and moved in the tie with Robert Griffin with 7 in 2012 for number 4 in franchise history in rushing touchdowns by a rookie in a single season. But of course, again, he surpassed Robert Griffin by the end of the game. Also, he was the 4th rookie running back in the league out of this entire 2025 draft class to have at least 7 rushing touchdowns this season. He joined Travion Henderson, RJ Harvey, and Quinshon Judkins. Now, granted, Quinshon Judkins has been hurt a lot of games, but Travion Henderson and RJ Harvey have been right out there. And Bill, not hurt, but vastly underutilized, and it felt like he was getting like benched essentially. Like it felt like, I don't know, did he do something off the field during practice or something that we didn't know about? I like Rodriguez, but the snap counts when Rodriguez has been healthy has been insanely slanted towards Rodriguez's favor, and it makes 0 sense to me. But either way, also at that point, Bill with 684 had passed running back Ricky Irvins for the 7th most rushing yards by a rookie running back in Washington team history. He now ranks 9th in most rushing yards in a single season by a rookie in franchise history again. And that's including that whole middle chunk of games, like half the season in the middle where we were on a losing streak and Bill just wasn't getting the ball as much as he should have. Insane. But Bill, at that point of 7th rushing touchdowns in 2025, that was the most by a 7th round rookie in the past 30 seasons. And again, that's before he even got his 8th and final one of the game. And so then, speaking of that one, he had a 72-yard touchdown run. And that one, for sure, without question, is a touchdown that no running back on this roster could have gotten, that no running back on this roster in the past few years could have caused. They probably could have gotten maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 yards of it, but 72-yard touchdown is reserved only for Bill out of any running back the Burgundy and Gold have had in years, bro. Just to let you know, that, of course, was a career-long 72-yard touchdown run, but no other running back on our roster this year and the previous few years, I would easily argue, could have had a 72-yarder like the way that he did. And that's something we've been waiting for all season. Again, I feel like it's more of an indictment of like the Commanders' problem and them not using them more than it was a Bill problem. Again, I understand that he had a fumbling issue, especially during our losing streak, but especially in a lost season, what do you have to lose by playing him more and giving him way more carries so he can learn how to hold on to the ball in game where it matters, not only in practice? I feel like a lot of the problems we've been having right now is that guys like Jalen Lane, they probably look good catching the ball in practice. Bill probably almost never fumbles or rarely fumbles in practice, but we get in the games and things are different. Why not play them more? The season, we're already mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, and even before we were, you could just already tell the season was lost like over a month ago, arguably 2 months ago. Play the younger guys. I've been screaming that since late October, bro. There's no excuse, bro. I don't care how much Bill fumbles. It's better for him to go ahead and get that out of his system this year, and then by the end of the season, you start to see potential like, hey, man, maybe he's fixed and solved that fumbling problem, and we can carry that into 2026 rather than us going into 2026 confused as the, did he fix it or not? We have no idea. He's an explosive guy, but, I mean, we haven't seen him get enough carries game to game to game to know if he solved that problem. But again, 72 yards to the house, bro. Again, nobody else on this team could have made that. And shouts out to Siobhan Revel. That's a guy that I really wanted out of the draft. He missed that tackle. Bill went crazy. And the game actually ended up being closer because of that. Like, we actually had a game to where, like, whoa, the Commanders actually kind of in this. Now, shouts out to the offensive line, the tight ends, and the wide receivers, bro. Because they got it to the point that Bill only had to make Siobhan Revel miss. And then once he did, he was gone. So the offensive line, the tight end group, the wide receivers as well on the outside all deserve some credit. But Bill hit 21.67 miles per hour on that run, bro. Again, no other running back in years could have done that in the burgundy and gold uniform. And shouts out to George Carmen. He said this is the most explosive back on the team. He has a nose for the end zone. Winning me money in fantasy, of course, he likes that, but still think he benefits to having a thunder to his lightning. That's why I think Kenneth Walker would be a great fit here. I completely, wholeheartedly agree. I feel like Kenneth Walker and Bill could have the makings of a top at least 7 running back room in the NFL, bro. And also with that touchdown, the 8th one, Bill had officially passed running back Ricky Irvins for the 7th most rushing yards by a rookie running back in team history. Also, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt rushed for his 2nd touchdown of the day and his 8th of the season. He is the first Washington running back, period, not even just rookies, to have 8 rushing touchdowns in a single season since Brian Robinson did it in 2024. And he's the first rookie to have at least 8 rushing touchdowns since Antonio Gibson with 11 did so in 2020. But Antonio Gibson was actually getting the ball on a consistent basis. Bill wasn't. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt also has 8 rushing touchdowns on the season. He is tied with Skip Hicks with 8 in 1998 for number 3 all-time in franchise history by a rookie in a single season. So there you go. He been surpassed Jaden, and then he also just surpassed Robert Griffin as well. And now again, he's 3rd all-time. His 72-yard rushing touchdown is the longest rushing touchdown for anybody in the burgundy and gold uniform since Adrian Peterson did it week 13, 2018, bro. That's insane. But it wasn't just the big plays too that was very impressive with Bill, which has me even more confused as to why he wasn't getting the ball a lot. Because there was this one play where he turned a -4-yard play where somebody looked like they came through unblocked, and he somehow turned it into a positive 15-yard play. Bill was special in this game. I would argue that play was more impressive than the 2 touchdowns that he had, bro. But again, I just feel like he's been held back by the Commanders not playing them. Of course, he's been hurting himself with the fumbling issues as well. But he has a knack for turning broken plays into positive ones. And I would honestly say that's his superpower if I had to pick one for him, to turn a -3, -4-yard play into a 10-plus positive yard gain. Again, that's something else. Nobody else on this running back group, probably nobody else we've had in this running back group in years, can do. And Bill, just to remind you, was the 25th running back off the board in this year's NFL draft. He leads the entire class with 8 rushing touchdowns. Now, granted, we still have a couple of more games to go. Some people haven't played their Week 17 game yet. And then, of course, we still have Week 18. But right now, while I'm speaking, and this is Saturday morning, 3:15 a.m., Bill leads all rookie running backs with rushing touchdowns, even with how the Commanders have completely exiled him from the offense for a big chunk of the season, bro. Shouts out to Jacob Sanderson. I don't even think this is a burgundy and gold fan. I think he's a fantasy football analyst. He said Bill is a 7th round rookie who will finish his rookie year with 800 yards, the most rushing touchdowns by any rookie, and a 4.8 yards per carry. But people on here made it their 4-month mission to tell you he completely sucks, and I think that is weird. I do too as well. But you can't even blame the fans. You need to blame this Commanders coaching staff probably more than anybody else, because there's no reason Bill wasn't getting more carries. Again, fumbling, I get it. If the season still matters, I get it. But when you know the season is cooked, especially since weeks ago we were literally already eliminated mathematically from the playoffs, why are you not giving Bill the ball? He could fumble 5 times a game. What does it matter? We're not going anywhere anyway. What's the point? I never understood it. But by the way, now moving on to the wide receivers. And hey, man, before we move on, man, we got to dive into HelloFresh before we get to the rest of this video, man. Because, man, that food crazy, man. Man, when I tell y'all that HelloFresh got some hits, boy, I mean, my family and I decided to make 2 separate days out of making some great HelloFresh meals. And it was not only super fun, but most importantly, it was crazy good, bro. Everything we made, while carefully following their super easy instructions, was a banger. And I'm for real, about to go get some more myself, and take this from somebody that the only thing I can make in the kitchen is a mean bowl of cereal. That's all I got for you. And I was still able to make some super tasty meals that impressed everybody. That cheesy smash burger and fries, banger. That Southwest chicken quesadillas, banger. And then the Italian chicken over lemony spaghetti, man, super banger. Probably my favorite out of the 3 that I've eaten so far, man. And I can't wait to get my family over to collab on the chicken sausage spaghetti bolognese that we have waiting for us right now. I can't wait to get to that one. And even beyond those 3 great meals that we easily made and chefed up, and it was great, HelloFresh just doubled their menu size. And my family has picky eaters all over the place, and I'm one of them. And with new HelloFresh, we can actually swap out veggies and proteins. It's literally like having a customizable restaurant at your home. And did I mention earlier that the portions are something serious? Like before, I didn't see the value as their meals were pretty small. But the new HelloFresh seems to have the perfect size portions to fill up my family and keep our portion sizes healthy at the same time. And speaking of healthy, I've been trying to get more veggies into our meals, and new HelloFresh makes it so easy, bro. The recipes sneak them in ways that even the biggest vegetable avoiders actually enjoy. And the meals are kid-friendly as well. My little cousin normally is afraid to even try certain things just off of the first glance of seeing them. But not only did she try the food, she loved the meals as well, bro. And I'm not sure if y'all know how much I be in the gym. I've talked about it a few times, but I love high protein focused HelloFresh meals, especially how protein focused theirs are. And new HelloFresh recipes help me hit my protein targets without sacrificing flavor. And that's literally felt impossible to find until HelloFresh came along to save not only the day, but really the week with how big those portions were. And again, it's so hard to find protein and taste in the same meal. And they have ready-made convenience, bro. It's so elite, especially for somebody like me. In between my games I'm playing, I may only have like 5 minutes to put something together real quick before the next game starts. And their new ready-made options are ready in just 3 minutes, bro. And with my promo code StreetScores HFZWL, you will get a free Zwilling 4-star chef's knife on your third box, which is a $144.99 value, plus 10 free meals and your first box shipped free. So make sure you use my code to get this deal before supplies run out, because this is insane value. Now let's get back to the video. Now this is an interesting situation right here, because Deebo Samuel had a crazy game, but it's like he had it all in the first half. He ended up finishing with 2 receptions, 68 yards, with his longest being a 41-yarder on 4 targets. And then he also had 2 rushes technically for 25 yards, with his longest being 29, bro. He averaged 12.5 yards per carry and 34 yards per reception, bro. You could argue efficiency-wise, that was Deebo's best game as a Commander, and arguably one of his best games in years, bro. And it seemed like all of his touches were big plays, but that's how you end up averaging yards per carry and yards per receptions like that. I mean, the 41-yard catch and run, and then the run over somebody, and the completely, the guy's helmet flew off his head. Like, that was setting the tone in a crazy way to start the game, bro. That super set the tone. Him doing that was like, whoa, okay, the Commanders came to play, and Deebo's not playing. He's showing you why we love Deebo. And then Air Raid Concept said, I want Deebo back, LMAO, just from that play alone. Again, I've been one of the people that's been saying for months now, my opinion has not changed. I would love to bring him back. I just don't think he'll come back, because I think the Commanders are going to set a certain price, a certain maximum. They're going to put a lid on how much they're willing to pay him. I think he's going to come in with a certain minimum, and I think they'll just end up parting ways. But I would love to bring Deebo back. You can go back and check the receipts. I've been saying this in my live streams and in my videos for months now. I'm still a big Deebo fan. I just don't think he'll be back. Now, there is a certain limit that I'm willing to give him, but I'm pretty sure my limit is higher than what the Commanders are willing to give him. I'd probably be willing to bend a little bit to, towards get closer to his price, to kind of give him the money that he wants so that he can stay. But that's just me, though. But, bro, that 41-yard reception was the longest of the season for him. And, again, the way that he blew somebody's helmet off by completely truck sticking him, loved it, bro. Then he had a big gain on a post route on a 2nd and 12 that got us almost like 30 yards. And he even had like a pretty crazy stiff arm at the end of that play, too, like completely threw somebody out of the way. And it took like a gang of guys to bring him down, and kind of like the out of bounds as well. And then he had another big play on 1st and 10 with 7 minutes left in the second quarter. They faked the handoff to Bill. Then Bill proceeds to go and make a good block downfield. We'll come back to that. Then meanwhile, before the ball is even snapped, Treylon Burks is going in motion from the right side of the offense to the left. So after the defense notices Bill doesn't have the ball, now some of them are focusing their attention on Treylon Burks to get ready to stop him if he does. And then you have Deebo doing the exact opposite of Treylon Burks, because Treylon Burks is before the snap moving. Deebo doesn't move until after the snap, because that would be a procedural penalty right there for the offense. And then also, Treylon Burks is going from right to left. Deebo's going from left to right. And he waited till after the play was snapped to run from the left side of the offense to the right side. Then he ends up being the person that actually does get the ball. So there are some defenders on the Cowboys that are probably like looking at Deebo third. You know, they probably looked at Bill first, Traylon second, then Deebo third. You know, if you're a Cowboys coach, you're going to get on them for that. But I'm pretty sure at least a couple of guys got fooled by all of the stuff going on in the backfield. And then there was just a bunch of great blocking down the field, including Ben Sinnott, who had an insane block. Bill was blocking this guy pretty well. And it allowed Deebo to get a 30, or somewhere around like a 30-yard carry, bro. And at that point, he ended up having like 97 scrimmage yards on just 3 touches, bro. Insane stuff. This is the type of stuff that we envisioned using Deebo Samuel for. It just would have been nice if we could have had Terry, Deebo, Samuel Cosme, and Jaden all healthy for more than just one game this season, y'all. And even in that game, Jaden Daniels ended up getting re-injured. We had one game of all 4 of those guys, arguably your 4 best offensive players. I guess you could throw Laramie Tunsil in there as well as one of the top 5 as well. You could argue Laramie Tunsil's probably top 3, top 2. Depends on how you feel about him. But just the combination of Jaden, Deebo, Terry, and Samuel Cosme, we got one game, y'all. And that was the game that Jaden got re-injured just a couple of weeks ago, which caused him to shut down the game. That was like the Vikings game, wasn't it? But either way, there was a certain point in this game where Deebo had like 90-something of the Commanders' 140 total yards on offense, bro. And even crazier, I don't know what happened. Don't know why. I don't think he got a single target in the second half, y'all. I don't know what happened there. But then Terry would have had a monster game if he had at least Marcus Mariota at quarterback. Now, granted, he had 7 targets, 5 catches for 63 yards. But again, like I pointed out earlier, he should have had at least 1 touchdown in this game, bro. Terry could have potentially had a monster game if he had, not even Jaden, just give me Mariota, and Terry probably goes off in this game. Again, shouts out to Josh Johnson. I appreciate the attempt, but he just wasn't good enough, bro. Terry was open so much and just wasn't getting the ball, even outside of that touchdown, and that happens. There are times that Jaden misses Terry. There are times that Mariota misses Terry, but Josh Johnson missed Terry way more often than the normal quarterback misses Terry McLaurin, bro. Again, especially on that touchdown. So if you were rooting for Terry to have a big game, be mad at Josh Johnson, not Cliff Kingsbury. There was at least, again, that one touchdown like we talked about earlier where it would have been an easy throw for Jaden, and Josh Johnson didn't even look at him, bro. Just like we talked earlier from the Red Zone and the Lab film breakdown. And shouts out to Swerving OC on Twitter. He said 5-yard line and Terry in single coverage. That's normally a big smile from Jaden and then a touchdown. And that's literally how it goes. Jaden smiling pre-snap. He knows he's going to Terry and then he ends up completing it, bro. Again, go to @Red Zone in the Lab on Twitter, bro. He literally shows you the all 22 from 2 different angles for both plays. So you're seeing 4 angles from 2 plays, and it's literally like, it's insane that like Terry did not get touchdowns on either of those plays. Cliff Kingsbury literally called a rub route, a pick play to purposely get Terry McLaurin open on the second one, and still Josh Johnson didn't look over there. I don't even understand how he didn't. My main thing with like backup quarterbacks or just bad quarterbacks in general, dog, like, how are you not looking at the best player on the team? If Terry is the best offensive weapon that you have, what is the point of not looking at him? I don't get it. But even though he didn't get a lot of targets nor catches, even Treylon Burks was pretty big in this game. He had some pre-snap motions and he had some good blocks throughout the game as well. He ended up only finishing the game with 1 catch, 11 yards, and it was literally, I think, the first reception of the entire game. And then from there, he didn't have any more catches. But man, hey, he was still impactful though, bro. That boy Treylon Burks was out there impacting the game in a positive way. And my bad, literally while looking up some Treylon Burks stats, I noticed that Bill had 105 rushing yards against the Cowboys. Do you know he had 120 rushing yards after contact? He had more yards after contact than he had overall rushing yards, bro. I don't care what y'all say, bro. That guy has RB1 written all over him in spurts. We just got to utilize him more, bro. We got to teach him how not to fumble. His vision needs to improve. He needs to become a better pass protector for the quarterback whenever he's not running the routes and he is on the field. But, I mean, 120 yards after contact with 105 total yards in the game, 2 touchdowns, bro. Especially coming off of a game where he only got 11 snaps the previous week on a short week, bro. Come on, bro. But either way, going back to Treylon Burks, speaking of Bill, one of those big runs that he had, I believe it was the touchdown when Josh Connolly, Nick Allegretti, and Treylon Burks did a great job of blocking on that play. So again, Treylon Burks mattered. Even though he only had 1 catch for 11 yards, he mattered a lot. I, of course, feel like we should re-sign him after the season. But with him both having great games where he's gotten a good amount of targets and has made the most of them, contested catches, all kinds of stuff. And on top of that, he had games like this one against the Cowboys where he was heavily impactful even while not getting the ball thrown his way much. That lets you know that Cliff probably has big plans for him next year, to where Treylon Burks is always involved even if he's not the guy getting the ball. He's one of your lead blockers on a run play from Bill or whoever. You know what I'm saying? He's the guy in motion to confuse defenses. So even if you don't have Deebo next year, you can have Treylon Burks doing stuff like that. Then you had that one play where Treylon Burks got the ball in the backfield. I don't know how he got as many yards on that play. I mean, it was absolutely insane, bro. Like, but again, even then, he was targeted in the end zone on that one play where Josh Johnson should have thrown the ball to an open Terry McLaurin. But for some reason, Josh Johnson felt like Treylon Burks was a good target there. And so, again, Treylon does matter. I feel confident that this team will bring him back next year, especially since you don't have to pay him much. You know, this is a former first-round pick, you know, a first-round pick that the Titans felt comfortable with trading away A.J. Brown to get this guy. Draft scouts saying him coming out of the draft that I think Arkansas, right, that he was a more agile A.J. Brown. So literally A.J. Brown, but quicker. You know what I'm saying? The talent is there. I'm not saying he's ever going to be an A.J. Brown, but you should be there's a reason he was taken in the first round, and you should be more than happy to get him on a re-signed, really cheap deal this year. I would honestly sign him to like a 2-3 year deal for really cheap. That way, great best case scenario, he balls out, and you're not paying him a lot of money. That could be huge for us in the future. But either way, again, I mean, he even had this one insanely impressive no-yard run. Arguably the best no-gain run I've seen from anybody in the NFL this season, bro. Again, back what I was talking about a little bit earlier, I have no idea how Treylon Burks turned a negative 8-yard trick play on an end around into a no-yard loss. He had the stiff arm like a couple of players. He had to, like, after they already had him, he was like 3 yards short. He still like pushed forward with his own legs to get back to the line of scrimmage. It was actually insane. Again, he gained no yards on the play, but the play started 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and he had to break a bunch of tackles and stiff arm some people to even get to that point. And then shouts out to John Com too, because this was a trick play where Treylon Burks was technically supposed to throw the ball, but it ended up not working out. I guess he didn't see anybody open or something like that, and it wasn't worth throwing the interception or whatever. But John Com pointed out the fact that during warm-ups, Treylon Burks was playing catch, throwing about 40 yards or so. So it turns out that he was warming up his arm for a play. Nobody was open, but that's interesting that Cliff Kingsbury even has plans for a guy like that, which again makes me optimistic and happy to know that Treylon Burks probably will be back next year. Now, you don't avoid taking wide receiver in the first round because you bring back Treylon Burks, but I would love to have Treylon Burks a part of this team moving forward. Now, moving on to the tight end group, Ben Sinnott, 4 targets, 3 receptions for 29 yards. That's more activity in the receiving game than we're used to seeing. It may not necessarily be as many yards, but 4 targets to Ben Sinnott has to be a season high. I'm almost sure. And again, he had 3 catches of 29 yards with an average of 9.7 yards per reception, which makes you think, why does this guy not get the ball more? Again, I've been screaming, along with Jordan McGee at linebacker, Kane Madrano Alekaho at linebacker, Tyler Owens at safety, all of the young guys around the team, Jalen Lane, or even some of those practice squad guys, Jacoby Brooks and all of those guys, like, why are they not a part of our game day plans more, bro? We're already mathematically eliminated again, like I said, even before we were. Why are we not playing the younger guys more? Why was Ben Sinnott not getting at least 7 targets a game? I don't care if he doesn't catch them, because at the very least, if he doesn't catch them, that shows, hey, we need to prioritize tight end a little bit more than we originally thought, because Ben Sinnott just isn't it. But we're still going to go into this offseason with huge question marks as to whether is Ben Sinnott good or not. The only evidence that I have that maybe he's not is Cliff Kingsbury being reluctant to throw him the ball, or the quarterbacks being reluctant to throw him the ball. But it seems like every time they do, something good happens. And it's annoying that it took for our quarterback 3 to come out there, your third string quarterback, for Ben Sinnott to finally get a season high in targets, and it was still only 4. But again, Ben Sinnott impacts the game similar to Treylon Burks, even if he's not getting the ball a lot. still a really good player, at the very least a really good blocker. John Bates, arguably the best blocking tight end in all of football, even though he's made a couple of mistakes in that department this season. So some people may not necessarily feel that way about him going into next year, but coming into the season, that was widely believed, and those wasn't even just Commanders fans saying that. That was guys like Brian Baldinger, all sorts of like regular neutral analysts saying, yeah, John Bates is the best blocking tight end in the NFL. Ben Sinnott is not far away from him. Colson Yawkov can block as well, but Ben Sinnott, I mean, on that Deebo Samuel reverse, where again the trick play, and you thought Traylon Burks may have had it, you thought Bill may have had it. Ben Sinnott literally blocked his guy into like the ground. I believe that was that him that blocked somebody into the ground? Yeah. Everybody else does a great job. Like Josh Connolly does a great job of getting like 15 yards down the field to block somebody. Again, Bill does a great job of blocking. Everybody's doing a great job. Ben Sinnott is the only guy who took his guy to the ground on that play. And there's a lot of plays throughout this game, even outside of big noticeable ones like that, where it's like a big gain of yardage by the guy who has the ball, that Ben Sinnott has some really good blocks. So at the very least, Ben Sinnott is a great blocker. We specifically, at least we know we need a receiving tight end in the offseason. Maybe it's Kyle Pitts, whoever it may be, or the kid from the Ravens that's not Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. You know what I'm saying? Man, we need a receiving tight end specifically because we have 3 really good blocking ones. Now moving on to the offensive line. Again, we came into this game with injuries. I mean, at a certain point, even Tyler Biadasz got hurt, and it was a scary scene at first. Like, people were kneeling down next to him and stuff like that. It looked like he was like out till September type of stuff, like a similar situation to like a Samuel Cosmi last year. That's what it was looking like. And then when he was helped off the field, he was limping off with assistance, with not putting any weight on his right leg. But then it was said that he was questionable return to the game. Questionable? That looked like he's for sure out. The only thing questionable was, is he out for the rest of the season? Is he out well through the summer? Is he going to miss training camp? That's what it was looking like from how, like, when he first got hurt. So when you hear somebody's questionable to return, it's usually not that bad, because they will immediately rule somebody out if the injury is that bad. Like Pat Mahomes, when he tore his ACL a few weeks ago, immediately ruled out, no questions asked. But Tyler Biadasz eventually got ruled out for the remainder of the game, but there was a big gap of time. Like, it was like it was literally 30 minutes. I'm looking at a tweet from Seawall Sports, shouts out to Candy, 2:16, questionable to return. And then literally by David Harrison at 2:46 p.m., literally exactly 30 minutes later, not 29, not 31, said that Tyler Biadasz was announced to be out. So that's a good amount of time for them to be like, well, injury's not that bad. Maybe you'll go back in there, and then they just decided, yeah, it's not worth it. But even with all of the backups, the offensive line that we had playing in this game, because again, even Samuel Cosmi was out, so we had different people starting at right guard, all kinds of stuff. Brandon Coleman eventually left the game for one play and came back in. It was quite a bit going on, but even then, overall, the offensive line was pretty good, even with the backup offensive line playing quite a bit. O-line did their thing. Like, Andrew Wiley did a great job of pulling from the guard position on that first Bill touchdown. Bill did a lot of amazing things on that first touchdown run, but it started with Andrew Wiley's block from the right guard position. And then, again, Brandon Coleman out one play, came back in, but Connolly and Wiley, just like that Bill touchdown run in the third quarter, both of those guys were huge on that run, bro. They were out in front blocking their tails off. Now, before we move on to the defensive side of the ball and special teams, and my Dan Quinn rant towards the end, shouts out to Sleeper, man. And of course, with them, you have a chance to 1,000 times your cash with daily fantasy football, man. Washington, I know the season is over, no playoffs, but we still have a lot of exciting things to watch in this upcoming Eagles game. You already saw Dan Quinn off pure emotion immediately after the first Eagles loss. We'll see him in 2 weeks. Like, he was pretty offended by Nick Sirianni going for that 2-point conversion up like 17 to make it 19 or something like that. And then plus the fights that we got into. So, hey, man, this Eagles game coming up may be very interesting. You can pick on stats for our Commanders players, like touchdowns, passing yards, receiving yards, or more specifically for this upcoming Eagles games, tackles, interceptions, forced fumbles, because we're probably going to be hunting to go out with a swing the final game of the season and send the Eagles with maybe a little depressed going into the playoffs, even though they already have the division shirt up. You can pick on stats, even like fantasy points, again, for up to 1,000 times payout on Sleeper. And right now, as you can see on the screen before we come back to my picks, new users can even get a free $20 without a deposit on top of the already 100% match up to $100 on your first deposit using promo code SCORE. That's SCORE. And even though the football season is about to end, at least regular season wise, then we're going to go into the playoffs, there's still plenty of NBA left. They have all other kinds of sports as well, like when the WNBA comes back, but MLB comes back, NHL, college football still going, college basketball about to start heating up as well. Sleeper has all of that, man. So make sure you stay tuned. And again, even if you don't want to sit there and type in promo code SCORE, SCORE, you can just click the link at the top of the description of this video and every video on live stream I'm doing all season long. And also, just before we go, I want to show y'all my picks that I have going for this upcoming set of games. Now, granted, some of y'all watching this, you know, like we have a Saturday game at 4:30 p.m. and we have a Saturday game at 8 p.m. that I have on this ticket right here. So maybe some of these will be too late for y'all, but I have A.J. Brown going over 60 yards versus Buffalo. I can definitely see that happening. Buffalo's DBs have not been that great this year. They've been pretty inconsistent at best. C.J. Stroud, all we need is one passing yard. He's going to get that. Tajay Spears, that's probably going to be a shootout versus New Orleans. I think he can get you 18 reception yards. James Cook, that's a Georgia dog. Like, what are we talking about? The Georgia Bulldogs had the most Pro Bowlers out of any college in the NFL for this 2025 Pro Bowl roster, but we ain't even got to dive into that. I think he's going to get you 109 total yards between rushing and receiving in that game against the Eagles. Kyron Williams, I think he can get you 64 rushing yards against Atlanta because Atlanta's run defense isn't good. Their pass rush is better than their run defense. Jacoby Brissett, I think that's going to be a shootout with the Bengals. Bengals are scoring 40 points a game as long as Joe Burrow isn't having the worst game of his life and you know, pondering retirement because his offensive line is setting them up for failure and things like that. I think that's going to be a shootout. Jacoby Brissett can get 248 passing yards. Speaking of the Bengals, Chase Brown can get 79 rushing and receiving yards combined, I believe, in that game because the Cardinals defense, especially with Walter Nolan hurt, that it's not a really good defense. It's still solid, but I think Chase Brown can go crazy. And then Josh Jacobs, all we need is 56 rushing yards, and his line is only that low because he's been banged up and he hasn't been very productive lately. But I think this final game of the season, to, you know, catch some momentum before they get ready for the playoffs, I think he can end up getting 56 rushing yards again. Shouts out to Sleeper. With them, you have a chance to 1,000 times your payout. Now let's get back to this video, man. Now, overall, defensively, a few things I want to point out. First of all, in the first quarter, the Commanders defense allowed the Cowboys to run for 6.4 yards per carry and convert 2 fourth downs, bro. You could tell Daron Payne was not out there. Like, you could just feel it, man. You could just tell the Javon Kinlaw, they were like, well, Daron Payne's not here. We're going to focus a lot of our attention on Javon Kinlaw. And then shouts out to Johnny Newton for taking advantage of that. But, man, Javon Kinlaw was going through it, bro. Without his running mate, Daron Payne, and then we were just allowing to that. That was one of our worst run defensive games we've seen all season. I don't think it's a coincidence that Daron Payne was not out there. And also, shouts out to Sleeper Commanders because he pointed out the fact that the average Cowboys series against this defense at a certain point in this game, it was like sometime late first quarter, early second quarter, it was just literally first down, incomplete pass, second down, 9-yard rush, third down, incomplete pass, and then fourth down, 10-yard reception. It just felt like pass, don't get nothing. Oh, we can just rush for 9 yards whenever we feel like it. All right, let's try to pass it again on third down because we're confident we can get it on fourth down anyway. And then they would. It was crazy, bro. They were 4-4 on fourth down to start the game at a certain point, man. And that came from Nikki Javala pointing out the fact that the first Cowboys drive was 13 plays, touchdown. The second Cowboys drive was 17 plays, touchdown. 4 of 4 on third down up to that point, bro. Just 2 drives in. That was insane, bro. And then shouts out to Seawall Sports. She said, there's been quite a few times this season where the Commanders defense could have gotten off the field on third down and then a penalty keeps them on. And then she reposted it because it happened again in that same very game, and it's been happening all season, bro. If our defense just talent-wise isn't bad enough to make us lose the game or have to stay on the field or allow points, well, boy, we're going to find a penalty somewhere. Now, granted, some of the penalties were definitely a little slaw. Like, the refs were definitely trolling us. They were doing us bad at certain times, especially that last Eagles game. I don't know what that was, but there was some bad calls in this Cowboys game as well. But either way, we got to halftime. It was 24-10, and for the 6th time this season, Washington trailed by double digits, and we lost all of the previous 5 games. Of course, we ended up losing the 6th one as well. 0-6 when going into halftime, losing by double digits, and that may be in play for this upcoming Eagles game, the season finale. It was even to a point where John Com tweeted at halftime, "Have a nice rest of the day, folks." That is crazy. Then Nikki Javala also pointed out the fact that drive-wise, 13 plays, touchdown, 17 plays, touchdown, like I already pointed out. Then you had 5 plays with an 86-yard touchdown, and then the next drive was 12 plays and a field goal. Those were the 4 offensive possessions for the Cowboys in the first half. Literally only 1 possession where they scored a field goal, and even that drive, 12 plays long, bro. So the time of possession, 19 minutes, 21 seconds for the Dallas Cowboys, bro. Just to let you know, there's only 30 minutes available. They had it for nearly 20 minutes to us only almost having it just a little over 10 minutes. That is absolutely insane. Nearly double the time of possession at halftime. And Dallas ran 46 plays on offense in the first half. That's the most any team has run versus Washington in the first half this season. And the Cowboys' 289 yards are tied for the second most in the opening half versus Washington this season as well. So our defense was arguably having their worst game of the season. And mind you, at halftime, CeeDee Lamb only had like 15 yards, if I'm not mistaken. So they were doing our defense that bad without CeeDee Lamb being involved. And Dallas didn't punt until like 10 minutes left in the third quarter for the first time in the game. Then they missed a field goal later on in the game. And just to let you know, those were the only 2 times they didn't score points on a possession in this game. Or I guess you could consider the final time where they ran out the clock. But what was also annoying was that even after a Johnny Newton sack, the Cowboys will run the ball with just anybody. That's what it felt like. It was Johnny Newton sack or somebody getting a sack. Cowboys run the ball with anybody. It doesn't even have to be their starting running back, Javonte Williams. And then they would just get the first down that way. Like 3rd and 8, after a sack on 2nd down, no problem. Let's just run the ball on 3rd and long and get it anyway. You know, because the Commanders' defense is just that easy. You know what I'm saying? And then also, going back to the snap counts, the split was officially 41 Washington snaps to 87 Cowboy snaps. So the Commanders' offense was on the field for 41 snaps. The Commanders' defense was on the field for 87. If you factor in dead plays, it was 44 to 92, actually. That is scary, bro. You can't succeed like that. The offense is partly to blame for that, but it was more so a defensive problem than anything else. Also, shouts out to Tom Schaff pointing out the fact that the Commanders had twice as many plays on defense as they had on offense. A crazy rare disparity in the NFL game. Per Sports Ref, this is just the 24th time it's happened since 2000 out of 6,690 regular season games. This is the first time Washington has been doubled up since 1994, bro. Horrible, bro. The score doesn't look like it, but like those stats make it seem like, yo, that was one of the worst games we've seen in the burgundy and gold uniform since 1994. That's what it feels like. But either way, moving on to the defensive line, shouts out to Johnny Newton, man. 3 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, and 9 tackles for losses versus Dallas, bro. He hooped, at least on the surface. Now, when you go back and look at the tape, it wasn't like all the way great all of the time. It was like great in certain moments, bad in certain moments. That's why, even though he was credited with 3 sacks against the Cowboys, Pro Football Focus gave him a cumulative grade of 47 because his run defense was that bad, man. Even though he had tackles for losses, but it literally, if he wasn't getting a sack or a tackle for loss, he was getting blown several yards backwards. It was insane. But Pro Football Focus even credited him with 4 sacks. They felt like he got even more than like the official stats like ESPN and anybody else, NFL, even gave him credit for, with everybody else feeling like he got 3, but Pro Football Focus gave him 4. Still had a 47 grade. And again, even on top of that though, there were at least a couple of times that, you know, his sacks were more so the results of great coverage, forcing Dak to hold on to the ball for a long time and allowing Johnny Newton to use his endless motor to get the sack. So that's probably why Pro Football Focus felt like, yeah, you got the sack, but we're not going to give you a lot of points for that. And shouts out to your hustle, but that was more so the coverage. Shouts out to Josh Taylor, brings up a great point. People talk about the defensive line helping out the secondary, but the secondary can also help out the defensive line with coverage sacks. Help Johnny Newton get a couple of those on Dak, purely because the coverage was so good. Dak had to hold on to the ball for so long, Johnny Newton had time to get there. But at the same time, there were a couple of plays, if you actually go and look at the tape, where you really go back and watch the film, and Johnny Newton didn't end up getting a sack on the play. He didn't end up getting a tackle, so it didn't count statistically for him. But he looked dangerous with getting immediate pressure on Dak Prescott. Like, he forced, there was one play that even Brian Baldinger pointed out where, like, Johnny Newton beat this guy immediately. Now, granted, again, some of the sacks he was getting in this game, it wasn't like he beat his guy immediately. He just kept hustling and hustling and hustling. Shouts out the secondary for locking up everything. Dak holds on to the ball too long. Johnny Newton just keeps hustling. He gets there. But there were some plays where he did beat his guy immediately. And that was definitely a positive in the Pro Football Focus category. And then he would get a hit on Dak, but Dak would just get the ball out of his hands quickly. But like one time, he hit Dak so early, Dak ended up throwing a bad pass. And the receiver, I think, was open too. But Johnny Newton forced a bad pass. So, crazy enough, some of his best and most encouraging plays were some of the plays where he didn't get a sack or a tackle. There were a couple of non-sack plays that really made you say, there you go, there goes some flashes of that first-round talent. I mean, throughout the entire game, Johnny Newton was literally, like I just said earlier, was either in the backfield winning with quickness, or he was making a play with like a reckless motor in pursuit, or he was getting blown off the line of scrimmage several yards back because of his lack of strength. He didn't really have any like unnoticeable plays. He was either glaringly great or glaringly bad. Like he shined from good plays, really, really good plays, or he was like, yo, what is going on? Why is our D-line getting whooped like this in the run game? The Johnny Newton experience, bro. He either looked like a first-round talent or undraftable on any given play that you may have watched. If you only looked at his good plays and his highlights, you think, oh, okay, that's that first-round play. If you just completely only watch the plays that he was getting blown off, you're like, there's no way this guy's on a 53-man roster. It's insane. I mean, in this game alone, Johnny Newton already surpassed all of our defensive tackles on sacks all season. Coming into this game, Deron Payne had 2. He didn't play in the game. Javon Kinlaw had 0. He didn't get a sack in that game. Johnny Newton, in just one game, surpassed all other defensive tackles on his team in overall sacks this season. Now, Johnny Newton, with a season high of 61% of snaps, of course, with Deron Payne's sideline, but this is his first time ever even getting over 43% in 2025. You know what I'm saying? So he finally gets more opportunities, and he goes out there and balls out. You're looking at the coaching staff like, hey, man, y'all might want to play him a little bit more. And granted, his 3 sacks, 2 were solos, and he had 2 halves as well. He had a sack, a half, and a half that adds up to 3, bro. He was kind of all over the place. And again, 3 sacks alone, that's already exceeding his total for the whole season to date. He had 2 coming into the game, and then he got 3 in one game. Matter of fact, it's more than he's had in any season so far in his short career. He had 2 all last season, and coming into this Cowboys game, he had 2 going up to the point before the game started. Then he went out there and got 3 to make his season total of 5 before this season finale versus the Eagles. And if he goes out there against the Eagles and gets 3 more, which I highly doubt happens, but if he does, some people who are only looking at overall stats are going to be like, whoa, that boy Johnny Newton had 8 sacks in his second season. He balled out this year. But hey, man, at worst, they could get some great momentum to take into the offseason if he does go out there and ball out against the Eagles in the season finale, which is what I wanted to do all year long for the young guys before we go into 2026. Again, Tyler Owens of the safety group, or even like some of the practice squad guys like the McDaniels kid from the HBCU college. I can't remember his name, right? Josh McDaniels, something like that. I can't remember his name exactly, but he should have started playing. Once our safety group Quan Martin already wasn't playing that well anyway, might as well play the younger guy. Again, same thing with Traylon Burks, Jalen Lane, and before Luke got hurt, Luke McCaffrey in the receiving core. Throw them the ball more. You know what I'm saying? Bill, give him more rushes as well. I don't care if he's fumbling. Ben Sinnott, target him in the passing game. Same goes for Johnny Newton playing more snaps at defensive tackle once the season was officially over. Shouts out to John Cobb. He said Johnny Newton still has areas to work on for sure, but he showed a lot in that game against the Cowboys. More disruptive, couple of times forced cutbacks as well. And again, those are plays where he doesn't get the tackle, but he forced the running back to go somewhere else and then allow somebody else to make the play. Now, he didn't always win right away, but he used that second and third step quickness to beat the blocker, and coverage bought time for him at times. Effort has always been good, and that's one thing about Johnny Newton. You've never had to worry about the effort. So if the secondary can cover a little bit, Johnny Newton can find success here and get some sacks, even if he's still horrible against the run. But shouts out to Zone Runner. He said Johnny Newton is not a 2-gap player because of his arm length, and he can't play through blocks consistently. He's more of a 1-gap player. He's at his best when he can shoot through gaps and use his quickness. But we've been saying that since he came out of the draft. I don't know why Joe Wood Jr. and Dan Quinn refused to utilize him in that way. Either way, though, shouts out to George Carmi for pointing out the fact that Mark Bullock had an excellent film breakdown article on Johnny Newton earlier yesterday, I think. Yeah. The morning of December 26th, Friday. He said, I agree that his performance was both encouraging and odd. Newton's strength lies in his quickness and pass rush, yet this hasn't been a focal point of his game this season. Blame Joe Wood Jr. and Dan Quinn. However, it was encouraging to see him thrive once you finally put him and utilize him in a way that best suits his skill set. And also, Johnny Newton is the first franchise player to record at least 3 sacks in a single season since Preston Smith did it in week 16 of 2015 with 3 exactly. Speaking of Preston Smith, he got himself a sack in this game as well against the Cowboys, and he got held on that play. He got held and still got the Dak Prescott for a sack. And he was awful when he first got here, like the first couple of weeks, but he's been pretty impactful the last couple of weeks. He hasn't been great, but man, and just to let you know, that was his first sack with us since 2018. That's actually pretty crazy. But even Johnny Newton was even there on that play where he got held, where Preston Smith got held and still got to the sack. They literally met at the quarterback almost the exact same time. Preston Smith got there like a split second before, but if Preston Smith didn't exist, that would have been another Johnny Newton solo sack. But Dak Prescott was officially ruled down on one play where Von Miller ended up getting credited for a sack on Dak Prescott, but Frankie Louvu got flagged for a hit, and that messed up Von Miller's rise in the all-time NFL sack leaders, because with that sack, if it would have counted, Von Miller would have gotten to sack 137.5, which would have had him tie for 10th in the all-time list with Richard Dent and John Randall. But again, Frankie Louvu's hit made the sack not count, which really sucked. But also, Ricky Barber, shouts out to him, man. First career NFL sack, the undrafted free agent rookie from UCF. Finally waited for his opportunity, finally got a chance to play, and he got a sack. And Ricky Barber is the first undrafted rookie to record a sack for Washington since defensive end Jackson Jeffcoat did it in week 15 of the 2014 season. He's the 12th undrafted rookie to record a sack for Washington all time, bro. That's impressive. So maybe that's a name that we need to watch out for in the offseason. Shouts out to Ricky Barber. Maybe some guy with some growing talent. You know, he gets an opportunity, he goes out there and gets a sack. Again, love Javon Kinlaw, love Daron Payne, but Daron Payne only had 2 this year. Javon Kinlaw has none this season. This undrafted free agent rookie comes out of nowhere, gets one immediately after he finally gets into a game. So that's something to watch out for. Also, Washington's 5 defensive sacks tie a season high this season. They also had 5 against the Chargers and Raiders. Now moving on to the linebacker group. Not a lot to talk about other than to rant about how Jordan McGee is still being vastly underutilized. We're going to get there. But Bobby Wagner had a solid game against the run, and he also combined with Johnny Newton on a sack off of a blitz. And that's literally the Bobby Wagner experience of 2025 for most games. Yes, he's old, so he can't cover to save his life, but he is still a first ballot Hall of Famer mentally, and you can see that in his run defense. That's exactly where he needs to be against the run. He's always right where he needs to be any run play, like most of the time, and he knows how to disguise and time his blitzes to maximize their effectiveness as well. So again, typical 2025 Bobby Wagner experience was on display against the Cowboys. Very impressive against the run. You don't want him in coverage, and then when he blitz after the quarterback, he does pretty good things usually. And then Louvu had a really nice spin to almost get Dak Prescott for a sack before Von Miller got to him, but again, he didn't know the play was dead. He ended up hitting Dak Prescott, got flagged for unnecessary roughness, which is a really tough play because he probably never saw or heard the whistle be called. He just saw Dak Prescott. As he's hitting Dak Prescott is getting up as if he was about to try to run some more. You really can't blame him for that. It really, that was just a really weird play where I can't be too mad at the refs on that one, but it's just unfortunate. And that really was a good very symbolic of our season this year, where even a good play has a bad result for the Commanders. Now moving on to Jordan McGee, bro. He had a chance to have a game-changing interception, but he just couldn't catch it. He ended up dropping it. And it was a great play all the way up to the point that he didn't catch the ball. But it at least showed you that he's getting quicker where it matters most, and that's mentally. Again, you can't teach Bobby Wagner to get faster. You just can't. He's old. It is what it is. But Jordan McGee is already has all of the speed you could ever need at linebacker, and maybe even a little more. But the one thing you can teach is how to get Jordan McGee to read, process, and react to things quicker, and he's starting to show you those, bro. Jordan McGee looks like a very solid starting linebacker going into 2026, so at least there's that. Bill has shown you flashes. Jordan McGee looks really good at linebacker, and Traylon Burks has shown some talent, but we still have a lot of question marks throughout this roster, while a lot of the young guys, and again, I blame this coaching staff more than anything else as to why we have so many question marks. Again, even if they played a lot and they sucked, at least you could go into the offseason knowing, okay, these guys suck. We need to prioritize these positions accordingly. But we have so many question marks where it's I don't know if you need to take tight end before round 3. because maybe Ben Sinnott could be a good receiving tight end, and it would be crazy to draft a tight end within the first 3 rounds when you don't even have a second round pick, and then Ben Sinnott starts to ball out. Now you have 2 good receiving tight ends, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we have other needs we need to take care of. We have so many needs and holes on this roster that you cannot overdraft any particular position group. So it's just absolutely mind-boggling to me that we don't have answers on guys like Ben Sinnott receiving ability, Jalen Lane's receiving ability. Even before he got hurt, you had plenty of opportunities to throw him the ball more, and you didn't. Again, even just linebacker wise, I mean, are we bringing back Bobby Wagner next year? And if you don't, which makes a lot of sense not to, Frankie Louvu, Jordan McGee, Ale Cajo, Kane Madrano, Nate, how bad do we actually need linebacker? Would have been nice if Kane Madrano could have played a lot more to where we can go into the offseason knowing, hey, maybe Kane Madrano and Jordan McGee can hold it down at linebacker. Maybe you bring in another veteran, Frankie Louvu can be solid as well, and you're good. You don't need to take linebacker round 1. You know what I'm saying? So at least Jordan McGee, though, there's one thing that at least shined, and that's something we can take into 2026. Bill at running back, Jordan McGee at linebacker, and I guess you could argue Jalen Lane as a punt returner. Those are things that we could take into 2026 with optimism. Now, moving on to the cornerback position, not a lot of optimism here. Mike Sanderstill is a funny case of hot and cold, bruh, because first of all, the first drive, he got trucked by Javonte Williams in an ugly way. Then he missed a tackle on George Pickens in the flat. It was a short throw, ended up going for 19. But then he had the insane pass breakup on that number 1 kid for the Cowboys, where it was like arguably his best play of the season. Even though it wasn't an interception, that pass breakup, like if we're talking about instincts, making a play on the ball, just coverage ability overall, that was arguably one of Mike Sanderstill's best plays of the entire season. He's just one of those guys, he gives you good, and then he takes away good as well, bro. I mean, the ball skills is insane. Shout out to Linnell Willingham. He said, Mike Sanderstill probably has the best ball skills of any defensive back on this team right now. The problem is change of direction and overall twitchiness. That's the only concern, and that's the question as to whether he's a starting outside corner at the NFL level or not. Then he missed a tackle later on in the game, so you got some good, you got some bad. Now moving on to the safety position, because there's nothing else to really talk about. Everybody else not likely to be here next year. Maybe Noah Igbinoghene, because again, I don't think people understand. Now, granted, I'm not saying that Noah Igbinoghene is a great player or anything like that, but he's always younger than people think, bro. Some people, if I were to ask you, now granted, I've mentioned this the past few weeks a few times, so maybe y'all already know. But for those of y'all who may not remember, may not have never heard me say it or forgot, if I had to ask you right now, how old do you think Noah Igbinoghene is? Former first round pick, mind you. How old do you think Noah Igbinoghene is? And I'll give you time. I'm stalling to give you time just to let you know. He is 26 years old. This is the type of guy that you're like, first round pick, only 26 years old. Maybe keep him around. Maybe something will click and he'll get better or something like that. I doubt it. I'm not going to just sit here and assume that happens. But you never know with Noah Igbinoghene, man. You just literally never know. I can't wait to see but ultimately, Trey Amos and Mike Sanderstill are the only the only corners in this group right now that are going to be here next year definitively. And so that's the only, and Trey Amos is hurt. I only feel the need to talk about Mike Sanderstill. We're not going to dive into Jonathan Jones, all of these other guys that are more than likely not going to be here next year. And even if they are, they probably aren't starting. But either way, moving on to the safety group, I want to start with Jeremy Reeves, because first of all, he got hated on with a bad call at some point in the game, like in the second quarter or something like that. Like, it was an insane call. And then later on, Jeremy Reeves nearly picked off a play, and it was a great read. Honestly, that was Jeremy Reeves' best play at safety I think I've ever seen, bro. I was shocked. I mean, where has that been? But we'll see if that's just like a rare occasion, if that's an outlier, or if that's who he is moving forward. Who knows? He'll get plenty of opportunities to show y'all that in this upcoming Eagles game season finale. But that was a phenomenal play. He didn't make the interception, but that's the first time that it felt like Jeremy Reeves had range. That was the first time he didn't feel like a special teamer on the field, playing safety, cosplaying as a safety. But by the way, moving on from Jeremy Reeves, bro, we have a big issue at hand, y'all. I know we focus on how much of a step back it feels like Mikey took this season compared to last year, but what about Quan Martin, bro? And the really noticeable play, 7 minutes, 11 seconds left in the second quarter, bro. The deep play to Kevontae Turpin, completely Quan Martin's fault. Just to let you know, that was the third longest completion of the NFL season. And that gave the Cowboys a 21-3 lead in the game as well, bro. Quan Martin completely his fault. Shouts out to Deuce Red Zone at Red Zone on the Lab again. He pointed out the fact that Quan Martin was caught doing the electric slide with one of his 28 snaps, lowest since week 7 of 2024. We're going to dive into that. Like, he got benched after this play, y'all. Literally got benched, bro, which is insane because, again, he's one of the younger guys. There's no benefit to not playing the younger guys, but if you feel like he's that detrimental to your overall team in the process of what you're doing, like Quan Martin being on the field makes Mikey worse, makes Jordan McGee worse, makes it harder for them to evaluate. They felt like that, and they felt like they had to bench him at least for that. That is terrible. But Red Zone and Lab point out the fact that with 1 year remaining, I'd still bring him back in some capacity, but like it would be really cheap and maybe and definitely more than likely not a starter. But again, he shows you the all 22 footage, 49 seconds, and breaking it down and everything of this is clearly Quan Martin's responsibility, and he was leaning forward instead of backpedaling backwards, and like it was completely his fault. It was insane, bro. And just to go back to the snap things, Will Harris played 100% of the snaps in this game. Jeremy Reeves played 84% of snaps at safety on defense, not special teams. 84% defense. Quan Martin played 30% of snaps, bro. Shouts out to my boy Josh Taylor of A to Z Sports, and I'm only reading a chunk of this article. Highly recommend you to go read this article for yourself, titled Dan Quinn sent a crystal clear message to a Commanders defender after recent struggles, and it might be the final straw for him. It probably is. Point out the fact that Quan Martin hit a new low with a bad play against the Cowboys. This is supposed to be a huge season for Martin after head coach Dan Quinn praised him this offseason, and especially after the way he looked against the Lions with the 2 interceptions he had against them in the NFC divisional round last year. But we're not going to get into that right now. But he somehow got worse after recovering from injuries to both his shoulders, and that's the craziest part. He had 2 separated shoulders against the Detroit Lions, had the best game of his life. He recovers from both of those shoulders, and now he's not good. And Josh Taylor even says that he's literally unplayable at this point. Martin is the 86th ranked safety in the NFL out of 100 Pro Football Focus safeties. And the numbers back it up. He allows 19.4 yards per reception, which is the most by all safeties in the NFL. And also has 15 missed tackles, which is the most he's had in a season. We still have a game to go, and he's been benched. The nail in the coffin was giving up an 86-yard touchdown to the Cavante Turpin after being completely flat-footed in what looks to be an inverted Tampa 2 coverage. Shouts out to Full Command on Twitter. He said, this is just a brutal rep from Quan Martin. Again, all 22 angle of the exact play. He only logged 28 possible plays out of 92 for the Commanders. Will Harris played all 92. Jeremy Reeves played 80%, which was 77. Only 28 snaps out of 92 for your only a couple of years removed second round pick. Supposed to be your starter, especially over Jeremy Reeves. The touchdown came on 3rd and 11, which is insane in itself, after the Commanders pinned the Cowboys at the 3-yard line to start the drive, and it's just inexcusable on every level. The Cowboys went up 21-3 after the touchdown, and Martin didn't play much after that. Martin had a season-low 28 snaps after almost having 60 snaps each of the last 2 games. Clearly, he got benched. He's been unplayable this season, and the Commanders need to fix the safety room desperately this offseason. And also, Josh Taylor goes on with the next part of his article. Again, I'm not going to read it because I strongly urge you to go read it for yourself. He said the Commanders have one of the worst safety rooms in NFL, and I agree. So now I ask y'all in the chat, those of y'all watching this video, Caleb Downs anyone? I know taking a safety in the top of the draft, top 8 pick is weird, but you can argue that safety may be our biggest weakness on the team when you really think about it. Like, walk with me. Let me break this down. Edge rusher, big need. Would easily take in the first round in my personal opinion as well. But at least we have Dorrance Armstrong, who was 5th in the NFL in sacks before his season-ending injury. You have a nice rotation of backups with Jacob Martin, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, and even just a little bit we've seen of Drake Jackson, his ability to set the edge. So Drake Jackson can set the edge and stop the run. Jacob Martin on obvious passing downs can definitely get after the quarterback. So, I mean, like, it's bad, but it's not the worst edge rusher group in the NFL, you could argue, especially if you're including a healthy Dorrance Armstrong and Javonte Jean-Baptiste back in there. And then, same with receiver. I would love to go receiver top 10. Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, sign me up any day. And even who knows if Deebo Samuel will be back next season like I brought up last year. And Jalen Lane looks like he'll be a great punt returner, but not necessarily a receiver, at least one we can rely on as soon as 2026. And Traylon Burks looks promising, but we shouldn't depend on that. And speaking of depending on people, even if you do re-sign Ayuk, there's no way we can depend on him to stay healthy, let alone play well, after being removed from football for about like 2 years now. But even then, there's still Terry when he's healthy. We'll see what Luke McCaffrey looks like when he comes back, because he was actually looking pretty decent. But I mean, there's no corner in the NFL that can cover Terry one-on-one. We've seen that. Terry even did Pat Surtain, the best corner in the NFL. Some people feel like he's the best defensive player in the NFL. Terry did him dirty. So again, I would draft wide receiver, top 10 draft pick, but at least you have Terry. In the edge rusher group, at least you have Dorrance Armstrong, and you could argue Jacob Martin in there as well. I would love to take a first-round linebacker, but at least Jordan McGee looks really good when he's allowed to play. Luvu still has his moments at times, his flashes, and I think a better defensive coordinator could get way better out of him than what Joe Wood Jr. did this year. And day 2 looks like it might be the linebacker sweet spot anyway in this upcoming draft, even though we don't have a second rounder, so I guess maybe take one in the third, or maybe we trade back with our first-round pick, get a second rounder. That's when you take linebacker, but I'd be willing to take linebacker in the first round as well. Even running back, I would love Jeremiah Love, but Bill shows RB1 flashes when he's finally allowed to play and isn't fumbling. Again, I blame the coaching staff more than anything else, which isn't a big problem to me like most people worried about as far as this fumbling thing. I think fumbling in general is a huge problem. I just don't think he's fumbled enough to like scare me away from getting them more carries in games that matter. I'm not talking about the end of this season. Games don't matter. Why not give him the ball? But this fumbling problem doesn't scare me as much as it probably does most people. But then also, you could also get like a Kenneth Walker or Breece Hall, who may not be as expensive as people expect in the offseason. And that would be the perfect thunder for Bills Lightning. And Chris Rodriguez is at the very least a good RB3. And Jerry McNichols is a solid RB4. You know, you would want an upgraded running back, but it's not necessarily the most dire need. Even corner, need for sure. And I could see why you would take corner in the first round as well. I love Jamar McCoy. He was the best corner in 2024, all of college football, but he ended up tearing his ACL and he didn't play at all in 2025. And you also have the kid from LSU. You have a few corners in this upcoming draft that are really solid that you may even be willing to take first round. I mean, shouts out to Westlake's great. I don't know why Westlake corners that are great, especially the Terrell bloodline. You know, you had AJ Terrell, now you have Avion Terrell, you know, Westlake High School, you know what I'm saying, going to Clemson. That's a first round corner you could take. I love a lot of these corners. At the same time, Trey Amos was looking like a top 10 corner, at least coverage wise. He couldn't really tackle against the run very well or consistently, but top 10 cover corner in the NFL already. It was looking at worst top 15. And Sanford still is great when he's aggressive at outside corner, especially when he can back up, keep everything in front of him, but he's just horrible when he's passive. And guess who would be such a dominant presence in the secondary that could allow Mike to be the best version of himself? My point, Caleb Downs. But back to my main point is, there is nothing in the safety room. Again, receiver, at least Terry. Edge rusher room, at least Dorrance Armstrong. Running back room, a collection of guys, but I love Bill. At worst, you can get Kenneth Walker. And even tight end, like, you know, every group, there's at least somebody or something to be optimistic about, even if it's just blocking as far as the tight end room goes, but we still need a receiving tight end. Safety? What is the one positive thing we can put out there on the safety group right now? Like, what? I like Will Harris's depth, but I don't love him as a starter. Reeves is an elite special teamer. Love him, but he's not a starting safety at all. Some would argue he's not even a rotational safety. Who's the starter? Even after you get Caleb Downs, who started next to him? Now, you could assume maybe Will Harris would play even better if he were to be next to Caleb Downs in the safety room, but still, you could even argue after drafting Caleb Downs that you still need another safety. There's at least one positive thing you can point to in every position group: receiver, running back, tight end, whatever. Safety is the only thing that's like completely desolate. I have no answers. I wouldn't be surprised if we have an entirely new starting safety core next year, even if Will Harris sticks around, but maybe he's your third safety. Like, it's that bad, bro. Shouts out to Deuce Red Zone. And again, he pointed out the fact that I've only seen one safety that didn't allow the ball to get behind him this season. He was asked to be released a few weeks ago. He's talking about Darnell Savage, which is crazy, because as soon as Will Harris got back healthy, Darnell Savage not only got benched, he went to inactive in games. But you could argue Darnell Savage wasn't a playmaker necessarily, but he was a better tackler than Quan Martin. He didn't allow things to beat him deep as much as Quan Martin did, or any of the other safeties. I don't want to pick on Quan Martin too much, but Darnell Savage was solid. I say bring him back next year, draft Caleb Downs, Will Harris. At the very least, that's a solid 3 safeties with, I guess, Jeremy Reeves and Quan Martin mixed in somewhere there. But either way, moving on to special teams. Well, technically, it's a smooth transition from safety to special teams because Tyler Owens had another special teams penalty in that game against against the Cowboys. So that's just something we got to watch, even though the one against the first game against the Eagles was a completely wrong call. I don't know if they said the wrong guy, but he was not offsides on that field goal attempt by the Eagles. But either way, he ended up technically getting a second penalty. That's the only thing notable from Tyler Owens that I noticed. I still want to play him a lot more. I think he should literally start at safety for you in this final game against the Eagles, because let's see if he can truly be good or not. He's a freak athlete, but can he actually cover? I want to at least get close. We may not get the answer in this upcoming Eagles game. We can at least get closer. And that goes, again, with all of the other guys I keep listing that are young that should play more because the season's already lost and we have nothing to gain from not playing them. You might as well play them because at least it helps you 2026 and beyond wise. Now, against special teams, shouts out to Jake Moody, man. He made a kick from 51 yards. And he's been good since he's gotten here. The only time I've looked at him crazy was when he missed that extra point. But people at the game reported that like the wind was insane during that kick and there was almost no way to know how to kick that properly. Anybody could have missed that kick. Even Brandon Aubrey of the Cowboys, who makes 60-yarders like it's nothing. Like, I'm not sure if y'all have noticed, but Jake Moody has made every kick he's attempted here since he's gotten here, except for that one super windy extra point that he missed that everybody, again, feels like he has every reasonable excuse to like, that's why he didn't miss it. That's why he didn't make it. But either way, Denver Broncos, he went 2 for 2 with his longest being a 38-yarder. Against the Minnesota Vikings, he didn't even get the chance to attempt anything, 31-0. Like, that was just horrible. Against the Giants, he went, where are we at? 3 of 3 with his longest being a 46-yarder. And then again, that's the game he missed the PAT, but everybody said anybody, any kicker, no matter how great, would have missed that kick. Then against Philly, he went 1 of 1 with his longest being a 20-yarder, nothing special, but at least he made his PAT as well. And then against the Dallas Cowboys, he made his only field goal attempt, which was a 51-yarder, and then he made all 3 of his PATs. This guy hasn't missed a kick since we got him, bro. This guy has gone, he went 2 for 2 against the Broncos, 3 of 3, 1 for 1, 3 of 3. So that guy went 9 of 9 on field goal kicks since joining the Commanders, including, again, a 46-yarder and a 51-yarder. And then he went, this season, including with other teams, he went 12 of 13 on PATs. And again, the only one he missed was an extremely windy one that everybody felt like any kicker would have missed. So is this your kicker solution going into 2026? I've been saying for the past couple of weeks, and even more so now, Jake Moody can be your, assumed starting kicker going into next year, but I would still bring in like an undrafted free agent rookie kicker. Like after the draft, just bring in somebody to compete with him, keep him on his toes. I think he'll be solid though. He's been better than Matt Gay, I'll tell you that, or any kicker that we've had over the past couple of years of the kicker chaos we've had. Also, this game was so ugly returner-wise, bro. Chris Moore and Chase Edmonds were your starting kick returners. And then we found out it took for us again. We got nearly halfway through the third quarter before our defense finally forced their first punt of the game. And then we found out, yes, River Cracraft was your starting punt returner. Again, Chris Moore, Chase Edmonds, kick returners, River Cracraft, your starting punt returner. This is a top 3 special teams unit in the NFL. There's a reason that even Chris Moore, is slow and lanky and choppy as he is running the ball, no quickness, no speed, is able to return the ball to the 35-yard line so easy. This special teams unit, both kicking and receiving, is elite, bro. Just imagine if we had all of our healthy guys. But there's a point to that. Jalen Lane and Austin Eckler on IR. Deebo and Bill are too important to the offense. Deebo was killing it in kick returns, but then he ended up getting bent. He stopped doing kick returns because he mattered so much to the offense, especially after Terry got hurt. Luke McCaffrey was literally on his way to a Pro Bowl, and I would argue maybe even all-pro kick returner this year. And Jalen Lane probably could have been a Pro Bowl, all-pro punt returner if our defense forced at least an average amount of punts in the NFL season. Jalen Lane could have easily have had 4 or 5 punt returns for touchdowns this year if he just got even a little bit more opportunities. And then, of course, also Jamal Agnew, who we signed for one day, but then he failed his physical, so we released him immediately afterwards. That was really like the microcosm of like how this season has been as far as like the Commanders' worst injury season of all times. This is a top 3 special teams unit, but it didn't feel like it against the Cowboys, because you know why? You have Chris Moore, River Cracraft, and Chase Edmonds all out there returning kicks for y'all. It's just awful. Now, before we get up out of here, I have some other reviews to get into from other people because they brought up some great points before I dive into my Dan Quinn rant. First of all, Ryan Fowler pointed out the fact that Johnny Newton, Bill Krosky-Merritt, and Jordan McGee, 3 pieces for Washington that showed up against the Cowboys, up and down 2025 for each ball player, but positives for each in a key evaluation period for GM Adam Peters. I mean, they picked a good time to look really good. That's going to increase their chances of potentially getting the nod to start or at least play a lot, be a part of a heavy rotation moving into next year. Shouts out to the Weekly Audible. He said there's like less than 10 players I could Sharpie in on a depth chart in their spot right now. Jaden Daniels, Larry Tunsil, Josh Connolly, Bill, Terry, Dorrance Armstrong, Trey Amos. And that's kind of true. We're talking about offense and defense, and that's not healthy. Now, of course, if you include special teams, again, a top 3 unit when healthy, we're great there. But offense and defense, I mean, it really is like 10 or less guys where it's like you can Sharpie them in, and that's not healthy. But shouts out to Linnell Willingham. He said, I'm super intrigued by and would strongly consider bringing back Traylon Burks, Deebo Samuel, Nick Allegretti, Eddie Goldman, solid right there as well, Jonathan Jones, Bill, Jordan McGee, Josh Connolly, and Chris Paul in the offseason. Yes, all of those guys will be free agents. You have to re-sign all of those guys going into next season. So when you're looking at, oh, the Commanders have this much cap space, those guys aren't included. Just to warn you. Also, shouts out to Sleeper Commanders. He said, never fun watching the Commanders lose to Dallas, but as far as losses go, I'm pretty happy with that one. Kept it close with a third-string quarterback that's notable. Bill, Deebo, and Terry and Johnny Newton all played well and potentially helped our draft positioning depending on who wins and who loses in this upcoming rest of games Saturday and Sunday. Also, shouts out to Commanders Realm. He said thoughts on the loss versus Dallas. Surprisingly, the Josh Johnson-led offense was probably the best part of the game. To no surprise, the defense was atrocious. There were a couple of drives where Dallas stalled a bit, but for the most part, it was the same old historically bad defense that couldn't get off the field. Also, Bill finally hit the homer. Felt like it was only a matter of time. Glad to see him have a dominant day. Also, Johnny Newton reminded us that he's on the team. That's funny. Ben Sinnott caught a few passes late. Again, it's annoying, like, because they doesn't even get a target till later in the game. That was a very poorly officiated game, I agree, and 4-12 will be thankful for this L in April. I mean, honestly, if you would have lost against the Giants, we would actually have a really good chance of having the number 1 overall pick right now. I'm letting y'all know that right now. I think we would be like in draft position at like 3 or something right now at worst. Like, it's insane. I'm sick. I'm still sick about that Giants win, but that's me personally. I understand why some of y'all care about winning every single game you can, but bro, we could have had a top 3 pick, probably even number 1, and that trade back would have been insane. I already did a draft scenario. We could have gotten the Jets first, which is like 7th, another first that they got from another team, which is 18th, and then a 2nd and a 4th and like a 6th as well. It was insane, bro. Or you could probably draft history shows, you could get multiple first round picks for that type of stuff. Either way, shouts out to Burgundy and Gold. Now we're about to dive into this Dan Quinn thing, because he said they cannot look at the NFC Championship game as if it didn't happen. Like you're doing, he was replying to Rant Burgundy, like ranting about Dan Quinn. He said, nobody likes losing, but the issue isn't Dan Quinn. It's continuity, which was lost with lots of injuries on the roster and lack of depth. I'm in the middle. I feel like it's both. I feel like injuries are the biggest reason why this season went the way it did. But again, I'm not ignoring the fact that even if we were 100% healthy, we still had a lot of flaws in this team. Injuries were the biggest reason. They weren't the only reason. And I feel like a lot of people are so black and white, hot and cold, that they can't see that both can be true at the same time. But for me, if we're screaming about firing Dan Quinn, it's not because of necessarily what he did this season. For me, it's more so what he may potentially do, or in my case, not do in the future for us. I am definitely worried about the ceiling or the cap that this team's potential has because of his antiquated way of doing things, and especially this team's antiquated way of coaching, especially on the defensive side of the ball, relying on grit, toughness, physicality, aggression, instead of just, how about you outsmart, out-film watch, out-scheme the opposing offensive coordinator from time to time, like Brian Flores of the Vikings does, like Mike McDonald does for the Seahawks, like Vic Fangio does for the Eagles, bro. Because even though our injuries were too much to overcome, I can see that. I've seen teams like the Lions be down multiple defensive backs and still cover well. That's why I say it's, again, both. not just one or the other. Injuries ruined this season, for sure. But this isn't the defensive coaching staff that can make up for a lack of talent available, whether it's by poor roster management, poor development of the players, or by injuries. And this defensive coaching staff, again, cannot make up for the lack of talent like other defensive coaching staffs do. You have to bring in a smart, preferably younger defensive coordinator that comes in and is innovative. But of course, would Dan Quinn even do that? He's too loyal. He is way too loyal to a fault. And I think even if Joey Jr. isn't calling the plays next year, he's going to stick around at least as a secondary coach. Who are you bringing in as a defensive coordinator? I'm worried that they're just going to bring in another old, antiquated, relying on grit and toughness and physicality and mentality over just out scheming the defensive coordinator, even if it's not Joey Jr. I think it's just going to be a Joey Jr. part 2. I hope not, but we'll see. But of course, I'm always worried about having a defensive-minded head coach just in general, no matter how well things are going. Because elite offensive head coaches eventually, offensive-minded coaches, like if they're an offensive coordinator, eventually want to go get the ultimate job, which is a head coaching opportunity. So whenever you do get a great offensive mind and offensive coordinator, he's usually going to end up leaving sooner rather than later, and then you're going right back in the hunt for another one. It's already hard to find one. Now you got to find another one, and it's just a cycle that keeps repeating as long as you have a defensive-minded head coach. Having an offensive-minded head coach usually leads to more long-term and sustainable success, which is why I think the Bears are going to be really good for a long time, because Ben Johnson's not going to leave. He's already a head coach, and he's an offensive genius. So that's a big worry of mine for this coaching staff. Even when we were on our magical run last year, we were just worried about Cliff leaving for another head coaching job, even after he just failed his previous one after the season we had. And he almost didn't come back for this year. I mean, it just seems like it's inevitable that at the very least, Cliff is going to leave at some point, even if it's not after this year. Maybe after the 2026 season, we bounce back, Jaden stays healthy, our offense is explosive again, we win a bunch of games, he's gone. Now you got to go look for another offensive coordinator. Then after that guy balls out, and it cannot even be that guy's fault. Maybe it's because Jaden Daniels is just that great, and he makes the offensive coordinator look good. Now that guy's gone as well. Now you're looking for another guy. We honestly get lucky as far as keeping... we got lucky as far as keeping Cliff for another season, because injuries ruined this season, but it has a lot of people believing, I feel like, again, more so injuries than anything else, that Cliff isn't a great offensive mind anymore. And maybe because of how this season went, he may want to run it back for at least one more year. But again, with me being a big ceiling guy, like I prefer, let me just go ahead and break this down for y'all. I prefer option A, being terrible for 4 seasons, but winning a Super Bowl in the 5th, over option B, being average for 5 seasons and maybe like a couple of playoff visits, but you ultimately win nothing that's banner worthy that you can hang up. For me, it's Super Bowl or bust. So option B just sounds like 5 failing seasons to me, while option A only sounds like 4 failing seasons. Even if you say option A, those 4 failing seasons were only winning 2 to 6 games, whereas option B, every season we're winning like 7 to 9 or something like that. I mean, that's just me though. And Dan Quinn, not even just because he's defensive-minded, but because he's Dan Quinn specifically, feels more like an option B type of guy. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but that's what it feels like. And I mean, he took us to an NFC Championship game year 1, even though that was more so because of Jaden carrying a bad roster than anything else. And he did take the Falcons to the Super Bowl, but that may be more of a Falcons thing to fold 28-3. But I mean, that may be more of the Falcons, than Dan Quinn himself. Or maybe you can place more blame on Kyle Shanahan. But from the clock management and in-game decision-making we've seen from Dan Quinn this season, bro, I'm definitely very worried about this team's future ceiling specifically. I don't expect us to just be horrible for forever like we were this year, but I'm worried about, can we ever win the big game that matters most? I honestly don't ever expect us to be this bad again unless we have another super rare injury-riddled season like this one, which again I think is highly unlikely. But also, somebody like me feels like it's Super Bowl or bust. And can a Dan Quinn, too loyal for his own good, win a Super Bowl in Washington? I wouldn't say I'm pessimistic about the situation because I believe in Jaden Daniels that much specifically, but I am keeping a close eye on every move we make this offseason and every move we make and decision we make during the regular season, even as far as like who plays and what we do and stuff like that, play calling, all of that type of stuff. But especially, it starts with who you hire as a defensive coordinator, because we got to get that out the way before you're even thinking about who you're going to trade for, who you're going to re-sign, who you're going to get in free agency from other teams. Your defensive coordinator that's going to call plays needs to be here well before that. That could be a really soon thing, like immediately after this Eagles game season finale next Sunday. And it gets even more complicated when Dan Quinn clearly shows us that he is a better defensive coordinator than the defensive coordinator that he hired. Dan Quinn has done more with less talent than Joe Wood Jr. had at his disposal when he was calling plays. Like, yay, you can call plays, but one, he doesn't want to call plays, so that's not something you can carry into 2026. Well, at least Dan Quinn can call plays next year. He doesn't want to. And then two, that's a negative in the head coaching department for making the wrong hire defensive coordinator, and also on top of that, taking so long to relieve him of those duties. I'm just hoping we kill it in the offseason, develop young talent, and have a great 2026 season to make this 2025 season seem more like a fluke due to an unprecedented amount of injuries rather than it being who we actually are under this regime. Like, are we really the 2024 Commanders or are we the 2025 Commanders? And just in case y'all forgot, somewhere in the middle is the worst fate of all of them to me, bro. I hate just winning 6 to 9 games over and over again, bro. That's the worst case scenario for me personally. Option A, 4 horrible seasons, 2 to 5, 2 to 6 wins, but you win a Super Bowl, the 5th one, or 5 seasons of just constantly being like right at the playoffs. Maybe you make it, maybe you don't. Maybe you win a playoff game, but then you get knocked out immediately after that. That's the worst to me personally. Also, before we go, shouts out to Zone Runner for pointing out the fact that Johnny Newton is a work in progress as a run defender, but in my opinion, his short area quickness as a pass rusher is legit. Dan Quinn finally realizing he's a natural 3 technique is shameful, and this is a late to the party type of coaching staff. And again, going back to my problem, this antiquated, always a step behind, never thinking ahead, never being innovative. It's Cliff Kingsbury and that offensive side of the ball. That's the only thing that's staying ahead of the curve, or at least with the curve. Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. leading our defensive ideas and everything, leading the defense, making defensive decisions as to who we bring in, draft and stuff like that. We're always going to be one step behind. And Johnny Newton's performance against the Cowboys is really like a microcosm of how that goes. Why did it take you until week 17 to figure out something that I've been screaming? I know a few of y'all have been as well. The best way to use Johnny Newton. That is, or even after the Eagles game, Dan Quinn said, "Oh, Jordan McGee has caught my attention." What? Man, December 22nd, I think he said that. Come on, bro. But either way, that's the end of this video. Please get a comment section. Let me know if everything discussed video. Be stiff on that like button, stiff on the subscription button, stiff on the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Really appreciate y'all for supporting every video. Shouts out to my Watch Today gang, man. If you're still watching this video and can still hear me, even though I'm an hour 33 minutes into recording, you are the GOAT. I really appreciate you personally, bro. Salute. Appreciate y'all, man. Also, shouts out to my late night crew that'll be watching this. I mean, it's 4:30 in the morning, so honestly, we're about to transition from the late night crew to the early morning crew. But speaking of, shouts out to the early morning crew. The first thing you do is start your day with a StreetScores video. And also, shouts out to my Noti gang that are gonna be on this video immediately, no matter what time it comes out. Really appreciate all of y'all. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. I really appreciate y'all. And I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.